Hey, welcome back to the Custom Built and Screwed podcast, everybody. It is Eric Jensen with Sprucehill Homes here, coming with an action-packed agenda for you. On today's video, we are going to just quickly touch on what happened with Charlie Kirk in the United States. We are going to have a little conversation about the Build Canada Now program here in Canada. We'll touch on BC Homes sales figures and where things are looking like for that right now. We'll look at new housing targets for municipalities. We're going to talk a little bit about the labor force here in BC and in Canada. We're going to look at some infrastructure investments that the federal government is contemplating. Bank of Canada rate cut coming up here. We're going to look at mortgage rates, and we'll wrap it up with something that I got a little bit involved with personally on an illegal home in West Vancouver that has been ordered demolished. So it is an action-packed agenda. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to get through. I'm going to be sipping my tea. Why don't you grab yourself a cup of tea and let's dive in. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on negativity. I don't think that's ever a good thing for anybody to do ever, but I definitely want to acknowledge, because I know a lot of people really appreciated some of the things that Charlie Kirk said, and there's many more that did not appreciate anything he said. That said, his life was taken, he was murdered, and I am a massive advocate of free speech, of civil discourse, about agreeing to disagree. Right? We've got to get back to a place where we can all have a conversation about a topic and maybe not agree with the other person. But if we don't agree with the other person, you know, is the feeling of hating that person when you've parted ways, is that the right feeling to have? I'll let you decide. Nonetheless, you know, I just want to express my condolences to his widow and his two kids, and to his parents, of course. No parent deserves to outlive their kid. And yeah, I don't want to spend any more time on it than that. I just want to say absolute tragedy and an unnecessary loss of life. So just really, really sad. Moving on to Canadian labor force trends. All right. So we are seeing rising unemployment across the country, and that certainly comes as no surprise when we are dealing with the multifamily housing sector. I am always in communication with a lot of these people that are in this business, and I actually even made a comment on a video not too long ago about, you know, developers and, you know, how many developers are going bankrupt. And well, I guess somebody had made a comment, well, when I see these developers, you know, going bankrupt, then I'll start to care or whatever. And I'm like, bro, quick search on ChatGPT, and I think it was just shy of 100 that have declared bankruptcy this year alone. There are a lot of developers that are not in a good way right now. You know, if you are looking for developers to go bankrupt, it's happening. That said, if you're hoping to have more homes and have better home prices and more affordable homes, well, we've got to build more. It's really, really, really plain and simple. Now, I would also argue that maybe we need to start reconsidering the step code and the building code and bring things back to more sensible levels. And perhaps we can look at giving developers more FSR for their projects if they commit to hitting step 2 or 3. But this absolute mandate that we have to get to step 5 by 2030, I mean, it's like penguins walking off of a bridge and onto a concrete deck below. We've got to reduce the cost of construction, people, right? My kids, your kids, all they're gonna want is a roof and 4 walls. And truthfully, like, I joke about it, but truthfully, like, if they get a floor, that'll be great, but it's not necessary, right? If it's a dirt floor for the first little bit and then they can upgrade to something more, then that'll be just fine. But this absolute mandate that every home that we build has to be net zero or net zero ready, it's just absurd. It is an absolute absurd goal. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And the cost of doing it is just out of hand. I mean, honestly, if you do the math and look at things, if you take a home that was built, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you just replaced their heating system with an air source heat pump, like right off the bat, you're good to go, right? You've already done a huge amount of work to reduce its carbon emissions and to reduce how damaging it is to the environment. I might also say, if we go back to that era, those homes were more recyclable than the homes that we're building now. The homes that we're building now are so full of glue and all sorts of other things that make it almost impossible to recycle and take apart. Like it's, plywood is not easily recycled, right? Like you can't go take it to the compost station. They don't want it. We as a society really need to start taking a closer look at, what are our goals and what do we want for the future of our kids? I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, aren't I? But nonetheless, we are having rising unemployment. And certainly, one of the things that I'm seeing from that is that, we've got a number of foreign workers here at Sprucehill who are phenomenal tradespeople. And, it's becoming more and more difficult for them to stay in the country and keep working here in Canada. And the problem is that it's pretty challenging to find skilled tradespeople. It's just, we spent so many years as a country and as a society turning our nose down at blue collar jobs. We now don't have enough of them. And I mean, these are great, rewarding careers. I mean, I was a framer and now I run Sprucehill. I've been very, very fortunate with what I've been able to do with my life. And I love working with my hands. The satisfaction that, I used to get from framing a house, oh my gosh, is so rewarding. It's so much fun. I think we as a society really need to reprioritize like what we covet. And I would say, maybe we want to start coveting doctors, surgeons, teachers, nurses a little bit more than some dude that can throw a football 100 yards. Just saying. Warning lights with the job market. So there's an uptick in job losses. It's up roughly 0.4 percentage points from a year earlier. It comes in as multiple interest rate hikes in previous years and external pressures like trade uncertainty have begun to cool economic activity. July 2025 saw a net loss of 41,000 jobs and virtually no employment growth year to date. Fewer unemployed workers are managing to find new jobs quickly, indicating a loosening labor market, with the economy contracting at 1.6% annualized in Q2. All right, so the implications of this job softening is a softer labor force is typically going to ease wage pressures. And in this particular case, it's expected to sap underlying inflation. And that is according to BMO's chief economist. However, it also puts pressure on policymakers to respond. The weakening job market is a key reason analysts anticipate shifts in monetary and fiscal policy. So we're going to get to that in a minute. They're probably going to want to stimulate growth and do something to cushion the slowdown. Likely is also going to have a few political ramifications as the government of Prime Minister Mark Carney is preparing its first fall budget with these economic headwinds. So very interesting months ahead with how that's all going to play out. Let's now move on to the Bank of Canada rate cuts. Just kind of reading off of two screens here to keep it real with us, right? So some of the notes that I've taken here. So we've had a major fight against inflation and we saw interest rates go up. Rates have been holding steady over the summer and, inflation is now moderate, around 1.7%, give or take. The economy is showing clear weakness. So the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, he has signaled that while inflation remains slightly above target, the bank is prepared to ease policy if economic slack continues to rise and price pressures stay contained. The central bank's mandate is to drive a 2% inflation, but with cost of living increases slowing and a trade-driven downturn threatening, a rate cut would also aim to support other parts of the economy. So some forecasters are even expecting back-to-back cuts this fall, not just one rate cut. The fact of the matter is the Bank of Canada really needs to balance stimulus against the risk of increasing inflation and or any sort of issues that come up with tariff-related price increases. I would suggest as of right now, the stage is very clearly set for the first rate reduction in over 6 months. Yeah, hard to believe it's already been 6 months since our last rate cut. So now let's talk about just mortgage rates in general and housing finance conditions. And why does that matter? Well, obviously the real estate sector in Canada is a huge part of our economy. As interest rates come off, houses become more affordable, is what it is. The payments become more possible. So we are still seeing 5-year fixed mortgage rates kind of in the fours, right? I think if you're a first time buyer, maybe you can get down to like 3.6 or something like that. Interest rates are still on the higher side, especially compared to the interest rates that people were paying back in 2021, 2022. There are people that signed up for 1.7, 1.8% 3-year or 4-year fixed mortgages. And now they're going to be renewing their mortgage, and that amount of that mortgage rate is now going to be, in the fours, maybe high threes. I think as things move forward, I am feeling really good about, rates staying in and around where they are right now. And I think more than anything else, all businesses, any economy really wants is stability, right? Instability and uncertainty are the root of all evil when you are running a business and when you are trying to make investments. People that are making investments, they want to know if they deploy their capital, what they're doing with their money. They want to have a fairly good idea of what's going to happen to it when they deploy that money. And when there is uncertainty, people are a little bit more gun shy to spend that money, right? So I think we are going to just have to wait and see what happens with mortgage rates in general, but certainly with the Bank of Canada rate coming down, it seems probable that we are going to see lower fixed mortgage rates coming up in the next 6 to 12 months. So stay tuned. We'll see where things go on that. Okay, our next topic of conversation is the Build Canada Homes program / initiative that our beloved Prime Minister Mark Carney has put forward. So before I offer you my unfiltered insight as to what I think about it, let's talk about what it is. So it's a new federal entity proposed by Mark Carney and the Liberal government as a part of their housing plan. The goal is to get the government back into the business of building homes at scale, affordable ones, rental, ownership, mixing uses, especially for people who are currently locked out of market rate housing. Some of the specific tools that they're proposing that the government act as a developer directly to build houses on federal public lands, providing financing to innovative prefabricated home builders, i.e. modular homes or tiny homes, to speed up build times and reduce costs, offer low-cost financing and capital to affordable home builders. That I can kind of sort of get behind. Cutting red tape and simplifying approvals. I could also get behind that. I'll believe it when I see it. It is an ambitious target because these guys have said that they are going to somehow magically build 500,000 homes a year over the next 4 or 5 years. The government has released a market sounding guide to solicit feedback from industry, housing providers, builders, municipalities, etc., on how BCH should be set up and how it should function. So, here are some of the key challenges that, have been identified, not by me, but by them and others. What is the definition of affordable? Balancing, multiple different objectives, municipal approvals, and labor shortages. I don't know how many times and how many different ways we need to see government try to execute projects and they fumble the ball every single solitary time. In my life, I'm aware of but one, and it was a smaller project. I'm aware of but one project that was executed. I don't even know if it was on budget, but it was definitely on time. And that was a bridge replacement at the top of North Vancouver. I think that one went pretty well. Maybe the sewer treatment plant in Victoria went well, but I don't actually have a lot of input on that, or not input, but knowledge of that. Almost every government program, and especially something like this where we're talking about setting up a department and having more people talking about getting things done. Listen, people, we need to stop talking about how we're going to do things, and we just need to get them done. If your job is to sit at a desk and talk about how you're going to do something, or talk about what you're going to do, and that's what you do most of the time, your job probably isn't very important, and you probably shouldn't have that job. We need to get things built. And if the federal government thinks that they have the competency and capability to build homes more affordably than the multitude of developers that have been figuring this stuff out over the past hundreds of years, they are absolutely delusional. Delusional. There is going to be an infinitesimal amount of waste, and just gonna go absolutely nowhere good, nowhere fast. My take, get out of the way. If you want to have more affordable homes built, fix the freaking step code. Fix the building code. Mandate permit times. Reduce the number of bylaws and rules that developers and home builders and renovators have to deal with and jump through. I mean, my God, they're talking about here in BC expanding some. I didn't have a chance to read through the entire article before recording this. I was planning on talking about it next week, but they are planning on adding some sort of additional search parameters that we have to do on our sites, so that if we come across any sort of ancient artifact, we now need to shut the job down and deal with all of this. Like, it is out of control, right? Like, we need to get out of our own way. And I promise you, I am not a puke oil into the water and chop down every tree kind of dude. Like, that is not me in any way, shape, or form. However, we also have to be pragmatic and practical. And in doing so, we need to get out of our own way. The only way to get homes built more affordably is to reduce the red tape, reduce wait times, and make things simpler. The current building code is out of control. There's too much going on there, and we have too many different jurisdictions doing too many different things. You know, when the step code was introduced, it was intended to be like, you know, we would have people build to step 1 until, I don't know, 2022 or something like that. And then step 2 was going to be till 2024. And then step 3 was going to be till 2026. And then step 4 was going to be until 2028. And step 5 would, you know, come in around 2030 was the idea. We have all of these jurisdictions, city of Vancouver, definitely high on the hit list there, where they're like, oh no, let's go straight to step 5. The hell, dude? Industry hasn't caught up and figured out how to build homes in this manner. And yeah, I get really fired up about this topic because I just see all of these policies and things put in by people who I believe probably have the best of intentions, but genuinely do not understand the ramifications of their decisions. And for a bureaucrat to be sitting at their desk and be like, oh, what's another $5,000 for a $2 million home build? Well, it all adds up. That's what, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 15,000 over there. That all of a sudden becomes a really, really big number. And it's death by, not 1,000 cuts, but it's certainly death by 100. Come on, work with me here. Let's get together and figure out a way to make life simpler. And as I always like to say, collaborate. We need collaboration. We need to get together. We need to get on the same page. And we need to stop the gaslighting. If you ask for input, then you need to listen to that input and not just kind of, oh, okay, well, we asked industry for their opinion, but we're still going to do whatever we want anyways. We totally ignored everything that we heard. Let's collaborate. Let's work together. I think amazing things can happen when we collectively work together. But if we keep marching towards this net zero agenda for 2030, like, you are not going to see any new homes get built for a very long time. A very, very, very long time. And you can mark my words on that. So we were going to just have a quick look at housing sales in BC. I think it's important. I'm in BC, so I think it's important to talk about it. So certainly, August of this year, August 2025, depending on when you're watching this video. This August hasn't been so awesome. In July of 25, for example, there were about 7,056 residential sales in BC, which is only up 2.2% from the subdued volume of July 2024. And so, we're up a little bit, but not awesome. Early figures for August indicate sales were roughly flat, around a 0.5% increase year over year, which better than it going backwards. I also think part of what is getting the homes to sell now is that people are coming to realize that we've got to, buyer and seller have to find a happy medium, right? Is what it is. I would say that if you are a property owner in the outlier burbs, I think we're going to continue to see either a flatness or maybe a slight decline in those areas, simply because a lot of organizations are demanding their employees come back to work in the office. And so we saw a mass exodus of people leaving the cities in favor of having more space and being able to work from home. But as those work from home options become fewer and far between, people are starting to come back in towards the city core. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 2 years with core sort of city prices versus outlying suburbs. So let's see what happens. I would suggest that if you are thinking of buying a home, buy it. I mean, if you're looking to buy and flip, you're probably doing the wrong thing anyways. But if you're looking for a home for you to live, Vancouver is a great spot. Every time I check it on ChatGPT for the top 20 places to live in the world, almost regardless of whatever parameters I try to put in there, Vancouver is always in the top 20. Vancouver is a great spot. And I mean, we're talking top 20 cities in the entire world to live in. There's a lot of choice. I would say, like, from a housing sale perspective though, and from a market activity perspective, if we have a BOC rate cut this month, and if we can start to see some 5-year fixed mortgage rates start to drop down into the kind of middle to low threes, we're going to see a lot of activity. And that's what's going to happen. But it's not going to happen quickly. All right. It's going to take some time. But mark my word, Vancouver, solid investment. No doubt about it. Okay. So now new housing targets have been announced for municipalities in BC. And so the provincial government intervened in housing supply, and they did that to combat the housing affordability crisis. They have enacted an aggressive program of binding housing targets for local municipalities. So in 2025, in August of 2025, a fourth batch of 10 municipalities was ordered to plan for about 40,000 new homes over the next 5 years. These targets have been set by the Housing Ministry, and they represent 75% of each city's assessed housing need and come with timelines and tracking. For example, Burnaby must add 10,240 homes by 2030, while Richmond, Coquitlam, and Langley Township must add over 6,000 units apiece. So the focus is on affordability. Government isn't just looking for raw unit counts. It has provided each city with guidelines on the mix of housing types and tenures. Enforcement is going to come from if the city fails to make adequate progress, the province is going to be able to step in with overrides. Already earlier in 25, BC issued directives to high-priced communities like West Van and Oak Bay after they lagged on allowing new development. In total, 30 municipalities had previously been assigned housing targets in earlier rounds, and reportedly over 16,000 homes have been approved or built in those jurisdictions so far under the program. I'm going to say that, in my opinion, anytime the government gets involved with this sort of stuff and starts forcing things upon people, there's almost always unintended consequences. And, I talk a lot about unintended consequences with my team. They are hard to spot, and they're even more difficult to deal with when they're there. But I feel like if you are not looking for the unintended consequences and really thinking about what those may or may not be, bad things can and will happen. So I personally believe that we should be letting the free market do its thing. And, if some developers have to go bankrupt because they built a whole bunch of units that have 450 square feet, then so be it. That said, maybe local governments and our provincial government need to start getting a little bit more real about DCCs and all of the different energy step code elements that we are having to deal with, seismic restrictions. I think we really have to ask ourselves, do we want to restrict the housing supply to only the best of the best and high end? And that's kind of where the building code is going, is to only allow us to build the best of the best. And I have joked many times before, if high performance was affordable, everyone would own a Lambo or a Ferrari, depending on, what your preference is. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? High performance and affordability are mutually exclusive concepts. They just are. High performance will never be affordable. Will it become more affordable as the industry gets more efficient, more effective at executing these codes? Sure, absolutely. But it's still going to cost more than just building a basic house. So you have to ask yourself, what do you want? Honestly, then we're going down the wrong road, personally. The last story that I want to talk about, and I did get a little bit involved in, was a home in West Van that had been illegally constructed. The District of West Van, there was a vote at the last council meeting, or maybe 2 council meetings ago. There was a vote to actually demolish this 1,500 square foot laneway home. Well, it wasn't really a laneway home. It's more like a coach house. And I mean, it looks beautiful from the pictures in the paper and on the web and all that sort of thing. You can look it up. It's on Chartwell Drive. The homeowner's lawyer begged for council to reconsider the demolition order. And, they talked about how, some leeway needs to be given for this, leeway needs to be given for that, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I can tell you, full stop, end of conversation, there is no planet under which that home that has been built would ever be approved. The reason being, it's at the top of a bank of the floor of the secondary unit or coach house, and the creek below, 30 feet. And it's also the top of a bank. It's just like we've had a number of incidents on the North Shore where people have constructed things like this close to slopes, and those structures have, under crazy rainfall, slid into the canyon below. So my question at the council meeting that I went to was, let's just give you a little bit more, because I think I touched about this in our last episode, but a couple quick notes. This has been in front of council, and this owner has known about the fact that there was no permits no permits pulled for this thing for a year. The West Van Council has voted unanimously. It was July 21st was when they voted to have it demolished. And they gave the owner 60 days to apply for a demo permit to remove the structure. Officials noted that owners had even commissioned an environmental remediation plan since the building infringes on a creekside area, but made no significant progress on actually taking it down for many months. At the council meeting, the mayor and councillors expressed astonishment that such a large unauthorized project, described as quite a structure that somebody built, could happen without staff noticing sooner. So the owner's response, the owners, according to district records, didn't initially attend the original council meeting. Later, they filed for a request for reconsideration. And in late August, they formally appealed the order, seeking to save their investment. The owners claim they are in litigation with a contractor, alleging the builder proceeded without permits. The contractor, in turn, says he walked off the job when it became clear the owners intended an illegal secondary dwelling. Under municipal law, however, ultimate responsibility lies with the property owner to obtain necessary permits. A hearing for their appeal will be scheduled, but if it fails, the district can move in to forcibly demolish the structure. So here are the takeaways that I've got. The story's garnered attention regionally as an extreme example of someone trying to bypass housing regulations. effectively creating a secret mansion edition. It underscores a tension between homeowners seeking to maximize property use and municipalities enforcing planning rules. West Vancouver in particular has strict zoning in its affluent hillside areas, and unauthorized buildings are rare at this scale. It's a 1,500 square foot home. Like, it's not insignificant. The case also raises environmental concerns, right? They've built in a riparian zone without approval. In the bigger picture, while BC pushes for more housing, this incident shows that authorities still intend to uphold safety and environmental standards. The outcome, whether the illegal building is torn down or somehow retroactively approved, will set an important precedent for how far owners can or cannot go in a jurisdiction facing both a housing crunch and community pressure to control the development. Okay, well, let me tell you right here and now, if this thing isn't torn down and removed off the property, it is literally flying a massive middle finger to all of the other people who have waited for months and in some cases years to get a building permit and play by the rules and do things the right way. These people are enjoying having this structure on their property. I'm sure somebody's probably living in it, and they are able to go and do their thing, and they are looking and they are hoping that somehow, some way they can have approval for it after the fact. Well, you know what? If any way, shape, or form this thing is approved after the fact, it is basically saying to everybody, hey, listen, build whatever you want. And if you get caught, beg for forgiveness after the fact. It might cost a little bit more, but at least you haven't waited for months or years to get a building permit, deal with variance or anything like that. You can deal with variance after the fact. You can apply for the permit after the fact. You can do all this stuff after the fact. No. It's got to go. It's got to go. And, you know, if this homeowner is trying to claim that they had no idea that there were no permits, dude, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're not double checking and you're not asking to see the building permit. You're not asking to see the inspection reports. I mean, come on. That is a stretch. And I would love to talk to them in person and understand how that is even vaguely possible for somebody living in such a neighborhood and in such an incredible home to not know that particular rule about construction on the North Shore. Well, geez, in all of BC, honestly. I mean, come on. No, it just seems to me like they're looking for some delay tactics and that sort of thing. Just get it gone. Set an example and be like, dude, if you're going to do something this egregious, then it's going to go. I mean, I could potentially be a little bit more understanding if they were on a flat piece of property and, you know, their yard just backed on to nothing. Like maybe it's just a forest or something like that. And maybe there's like a forest fire hazard or something like that. Okay, fine. I mean, you know, still not cool. And it's going to be tough to prove that everything that's been built on that property has been done at or above building code. But the fact that this is on a slope, a massive slope. And I think that, you know, the biggest concern that everybody in the District of West Van should have is who is going to foot the bill if and when this sucker slides into Brothers Creek. All right. It's been an action-packed episode this week. I'm, you know, certainly trying to get better at what I'm doing here. If you have any topics that you'd like to have me cover or anything more that you would like to know about or anything, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. I certainly am looking forward to continuing doing this. I really think it's a great way to reach out and talk to everybody that might be interested in what's going on the North Shore and across BC, as insofar as, you know, housing and real estate is concerned, and certainly construction and, you know, things that are influencing construction. I am always here and willing to say the quiet part out loud. I'm very good at putting my foot in my mouth, and I'm also very good at apologizing when I screw up. I always have an open mind, and if somebody can convince me that an opinion or a methodology that I think is wrong, I would love to have that conversation, preferably in person, but, you know, certainly challenge me. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I sure hope you'll consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. Bye now.